Boom. Explosions. Hello internet, how are we doing today? Thank you. Who we got? Race Base and Flesh Eaters 18. Presumably there's at least 17 other Flesh Eaters out there causing an awful lot of problems in the world. My name is Liam Taylor, LTGuitarist. Today we are going back to basics. We are doing a, if I was someone that called myself a YouTuber, I would call this a blind reaction to Cubase Elements 11. Of course, I am not. I'm a real professional music boy. That's what it says on my business cards. I'm already distracted by a story that I've created myself here. This stream is a complete beginner's intro to Cubase Elements 11. It's a brand new install. I installed it yesterday and opened it to make sure it ran and made noise. Other than that, I haven't opened a version of Cubase that isn't Pro in like 8 years at least, maybe a decade. So the reason we're doing this is so that I can... I think I get the impression that a lot of people that come hang out on the streams don't have access to the expensive versions of software. So I think it's really important that we open it up and do something that is available on much more of a budget. And I think actually you could do an awful lot with the lighter versions of Cubase, especially the up-to-date modern versions of Cubase. There's a whole load of stuff in there. I think that's really great. I think Steinberg are doing wonderful things. So I'm pretty excited. We're going in from nothing, and I'm not going to use any hardware controllers, no audio. We're just going to see what we can do inside of Cubase Elements 11, starting from scratch. And I'm going to assume you, the viewer, has absolutely no prior knowledge of Cubase, no prior knowledge of music production, no prior knowledge of music theory or anything. So we're going absolute back to basics. Yeah, I guess let's get into it. So here's my desktop. Isn't it clean? Once you have installed, I assume you have to install Steinberg Download Assistant or Steinberg Download Manager, whatever it's called. Once you get Elements installed, you open it up. You probably have to do something with licensing, and then you will get this screen. The Steinberg hub, and there's a handful of different what do we call them, presets, templates is probably the word we'd use. There's a handful of templates, and once you start working on projects, they'll appear under this recent window. So if you worked on a track yesterday, you don't necessarily have to remember where you put it, because you can just open up Elements 11 and go to the recent tab, and it's right there, which is nice, which is real convenient. We're going to go more at the end here, and we're going to create an empty project. You might need to select project location, because the default location might not work for you. So I'm going to go prompts for project location and hit create, and I'm going to create something on the desktop. We're just going to go Elements stream, today's date 15th of the 1st 20. Oh no, oh, I've definitely been using the wrong dates because it is January, so that's gonna happen, isn't it? Right, this is what you will... Oh, Galactica, no, don't you worry. Like, my desktop, I cleaned it for the sake of this. My desktop usually has just a whole load of stuff, but I kind of cleaned it because I realized I wanted to start from blank. No, there's crap all over the place most of the time. Don't you worry. Okay, this is the interface. You may notice that when I go live with Pro, I have a slightly different interface. The main thing you might notice is that mine project is a lot brighter. Just because I don't like the dark gunmetal situation. If you wanted to change that kind of thing, you'd go up the top here to Project Colors Setup. Is it Project Colors Setup or Project Setup? It's neither of those things, is it? This is why we're doing it from Edit Preferences. This is why we're doing it from absolutely blind because it's going to be a way more accurate representation of what it's like going in as a new user. I think you can go down to general personalization. No, user interface, color schemes. There we are. So you can change all of the color schemes in here if you want to play around with that. I like something a lot brighter because I think it's a lot nicer to look at, especially doing live broadcasts. I think having a brighter interface is a little more vibrant and nice. So it might be that you want to jump in and start making music immediately, which would be absolutely fair enough. The first thing that I actually want to do is get rid of some of this clutter, partly because I'm just not going to use a lot of the stuff that's up here, and partly because, again, as a streamer, I find a lot of this stuff distracting. So what we're going to do to start with, this panel on the right hand side, where we have things like VST instruments and all that stuff, I don't use that. I find this panel on the right hand side to actually just be a little annoying. I'm going to get rid of this panel. If you go to the top right here, you can see we've got options for the left hand inspector, for a lower panel down here, and for this right hand panel. I'm just going to click that to get rid of that. What else have we got? This all looks about right. These are the tools I'm going to need. And then at the bottom here, I don't like having the transport panel at the bottom here. So I'm going to use the little cog in the bottom right hand. I'm actually just going to get rid of all of this stuff. And you'll see why in just a second. It would be handy if there was a get rid of all button, but apparently there's not. Oh, that right divider thing moves the cog, which is unhelpful. I just turned something on there, didn't I? That's good. And then I clicked something. Oh yeah, I can just remove all of these. Here we go. Here we go. Ah, okay. You know what? If there was a way to get rid of this absolute bottom bit, I would, but never mind. So that's nice and empty, which is how I prefer that. And I'm going to go up here to transport and open up the transport panel. This is a lot of the options we had down here, but this is movable. We can put this wherever, and I much prefer that. And if you look at the bottom here, we've got a loop, stop, play and record button with 3 dots next to it. If you click on the 3 dots, we can pull that out or we can shrink it down. I'm going to make that a bit smaller. I also don't need markers or anything like that. Oh, we can't get rid of them. That's helpful. Here we are. Cog again. Going to get rid of locators. Going to get rid of MIDI audio quantize. Going to get rid of input-output activity. Going to get rid of punch points. I'm going to leave that as it is. And then I can expand these transport controls just in case I need them. That's going to live over here. You can put it wherever. I don't care. So, on to actually, making sounds and making music and stuff. We use, by and large, when we're creating music digitally, we use something called instrument tracks. And these are lines of instruments. That's how you think of it, lines of instruments. In the left-hand area here, we've got something called input-output channels, and under that we have a big blank space. If you right-click in the big blank space, we have a bunch of options to add stuff. If we're creating electronic music, and all the instruments are coming from the computer itself, we only really ever need add instrument track. In fact, if you watch any of the other streams, I basically only use add instrument tracks. If I play guitar or bass or any other instrument that exists outside of Cubase, I'll add an audio track. Almost all of the time it's an instrument track, so we're going to add instrument track. This little window pops up and it wants to know what instrument track do we add. If you click on instruments, we've got some options. I'm going to guess for you that the other folder isn't going to exist. You're probably going to have HAlion Sonic, Groove Agent SE, and I believe Retrolog. I think we're going to use HAlion Sonic almost entirely for all of our pitched instruments, and we're going to use Groove Agent for drums today. So this big, scary, daunting looking window will appear, and this is where all of your samples, all of your different instruments appear inside of here. At the top here, we can click this yellow thing. I want to see HSE Basic, because those are the ones that I'm pretty sure are going to come with the Elements version of the software. And I obviously want to use stuff that you have access to. We're going to try and find some kind of piano. We can do that by looking through these categories. These are the category. This is alphabetical, so we can go down this list here. Piano. We have 4 different types of piano to choose from. These are all general MIDI, so they're going to sound a little bit basic, but you know what, that's fine. We're going to use the Bright Acoustic Piano. If you have a MIDI instrument connected, you could play some keys and it would make some noises, probably piano noises. If not, you can click on this little piano bar here and piano noises will happen. What's great about this is I can change anything in here. We can go into edit and change the sounds if we really want to, and then we close HAlion Sonic and those changes still exist. If we go back up to our track here, in the far left hand panel, under the name of the instrument, under the name of the plugin, HAlion Sonic SE, there's a tiny little keyboard with an arrow next to it. If you click that, boop, there we go, it loads it up again. Wonderful stuff. Likewise on the track itself, which if we want to, we can make a bit bigger. We can open up just to see it a bit better, and there's a little edit instrument button there. That just opens that up and gets rid of it. Nice and easy. We're going to rename this. Because we're going to use a couple different instances of HAlion. It's going to get confusing, so we're going to rename this Piano. We're just going to double click on the name, type whatever we want, and then hit enter or click away, and there it is. There's also, if you open the track up enough, just by hovering over the bottom end of it, clicking and moving, a big empty box. We can double click in there and we can add a little image just so we can see clearly what's going on. Piano. Lovely. So how do we actually start making sound? Fair question. Up here we've got some tools. These tools correspond, this is kind of like a standard editing layout. These tools broadly correspond to numbers on your keyboard. So if I keep pressing 1, I have different versions of this cursor tool, which we'll get to in a bit. 2 is this range selection tool. 3 is the scissors for some reason, and if we keep going, 8 is this pencil tool, the draw tool. I think in my pro version I've changed it so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because, you know, why wouldn't you do that, but whatever. 8 for draw. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. I'm going to hold Control and use the mouse wheel to zoom in or out. I can tell I'm zooming in because these numbers are getting further away from each other. There we go. I've zoomed in so that bars 3 and 4 take up most of this space here. And that's what these are, by the way. Those are bar numbers. If you don't have this, it's possible that you have seconds. If you right click up here, you can change it to seconds. You can change it to time code if you're doing film scoring. Samples, I don't know why you would ever need that. We're going to use beats and bars, and I want to make sure that my grid is selected. At the top here we've got the word grid. The little button next to it should be white, because that means if I click in this space and drag over, I've created a clip that is the length of bar 3 and bar 4. And it's exactly that length because I've got grid on. If I had grid off, I could create something that's whatever length I want, but I want something to be precisely this long. I've got 3 things here that I need to get rid of now, so I'm going to press 1 on my keyboard to select the object selection, the default cursor. I'm going to highlight these 3 clips that I don't want. I'm going to hit delete, and they've gone forever. Hurrah. Right. We're nearly at the bit where we make sound. If I double click on this clip, that's what a block like this is, we get a new window. This is called the MIDI selection window. Again, if you watch the streams, you will know that I work with this as its whole separate window. That's just how I prefer to do things. At the top of this window, so kind of in the middle of the screen, you've got this little outwards arrow. If you press that, it opens the key editor in its own window, which I find a lot more helpful. So I'm just going to double click to make that full screen. I'm going to use Control and mouse wheel to zoom out, and we can see this is bar 3 and bar 4 here. Wonderful. And we've got notes of a keyboard down the left hand side here. What happens if we play those? Oh heck, we get a bit of noise, don't we? I find that this is quite hard to read, so I like to make these keys a lot wider. If you go down to the bottom right here, you've got a little plus minus scale here. We can zoom in by clicking and dragging down, or zoom out by clicking and dragging up. I like to zoom all the way in, or most of the way in, like that. We're nearly at the bit where you make music. What we're going to do is we're going to double click in this space, and we're going to see what happens. Well, you can maybe guess what happens. Double click. We've got an F. We've got an F3 note that makes that sound. Wonderful. We've made progress. So you can double click anywhere in here and it makes a note. Notice how if you move the mouse up and down, if you move your cursor up and down, it highlights different notes on the piano over here. So if I want to make a C4, I can scroll up and down, by the way, to see different pitches. If I want to make a C4, you can see C4 labelled here. If I want a C4 at the start of bar 4, I can hover here because I can see that that's going to play a C4 on the left-hand side there. There it is, C4. Wonderful. So, I'm going to click at the very top here. I'm going to click just where it says 3.3. I'm going to click there, and this massive line appears. This is your play bar. So if you hit play, it's going to play from here until you tell it to stop. So on the transport panel, we're going to hit play, which is the start button, the little triangle that goes that way. Ooh, that was a bit weird and chaotic, but it was definitely music. I'm just going to push this way again. So that's progress. We've made a dyad and a chord. Well done, everybody. Well done, team. I'm going to hover over those and I'm going to delete them. I'm going to, at the start of bar 3 here, we can see this is where bar 3 starts, and then we've got the different beats within the bar, and then bar 4, beat 2 of bar 4, beat 3 of bar 4, beat 4 of bar 4. I'm going to change my grid. We're currently on 16th notes. I'm going to go up here and I'm going to select quarter notes. So we get 4 notes to a bar. And I'm going to click C4 in this first one. And then I'm going to click A3, G3, and then C3. How does that sound? Again, clicking at the top here on beat 2.4 and pressing play or spacebar. Yeah, it's pretty good. It's not the best thing in the world, but it's pretty good. I want to write in the next bar I want to write a pattern that's similar, but I want to end on a slightly different note. So I could just click these in again. A quicker way would be to highlight the whole phrase, like so, and press Control and D. And it just duplicates it, and it duplicates it in the next available space. So this is also aligned to the grid, which is perfect. So if I play this, we're going to have the same played twice. Good stuff. And I did say I wanted to change one of these notes. So we're going to take this C and we're going to end on, I think, E instead. How does that sound? Yeah, again, it's not the greatest thing in the world, but it's fine. If I close out of this, we go back to the original screen, and you can see, of course, that these notes exist in this version of the MIDI editor down here, as well as inside the block here. I'm going to close this MIDI editor. I wonder if it's going to open that by default. I wonder if there's a way to change it so every time it opens up in the other way. Possibly not. It's fine. We'll work with that. So let's say, I'm zooming out slightly, we've got this 2-bar phrase, and as far as we're concerned, that's the best thing we've ever written. We're just going to play that forever and ever. We can click that, and we can press Control D again. And we have the pattern, the 2-bar phrase repeated now 4 times. Yeah, it's alright, isn't it? I'm actually going to delete these 3 repeats. I'm going to do 2 things. I'm going to start by duplicating the track, and then I'm going to turn these notes into chords. It's real easy. So, firstly, we're going to block the person sending spam on YouTube. They can go away. Now what we're going to do is we're going to right click on the piano track. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. I'm going to right click and we're going to duplicate tracks. So not only has it taken the piano instrument and made another track with that, it's not taken the piano symbol for some reason, but that's fine, we'll cope. It's also taken the clip and repeated that. So if we played this, we'd have the same thing played twice. It's just going to sound loud. Yeah, exactly the same thing, just louder. So what if I go into this second track in here, and actually I don't want a piano for this one. I want a bass. So we're going to, in this category, we're going to select bass, and I'm going to search for, let's go fretless bass for a bit of fun. So I don't have to change any of the MIDI data, any of the clip here. It's just going to play that now as a bass. And just to remind myself what I'm doing, I'm going to rename that track bass. Double click the track name, type in whatever you want to call it. I somehow just opened up this window, which I don't need. Let's play that. Sounds different. The problem is the thing that is being played on the bass now is a little too high up to reasonably be played on a bass. Let me try that again. It's a little too high up to reasonably be played on the bass. That was a very hard sentence. I'm going to pat myself on the back for that later. We're going to double click on this bass, and again I'm going to open that in another window, so we can see that this all exists in the same register. It's in the same octave between C3, the lowest note, and C4, the lowest note. And when we play those, when we click them, it just doesn't really sound like a bass, does it? Because it's not very low. I'm going to highlight all of these. I'm going to zoom out slightly and zoom down, because we're going to press shift down to take it down an octave, and we're going to press shift down again to take it down another octave. Now when we play it back, sounds way more like a bass, doesn't it? Because it's in that lower register. Cool. Again, I'm going to close this. I'm going to close... Oh, you can't see where that is. So sorry if you got stuck before, because it was hidden behind my head. We can close this lower area by pressing this cross down here. Sorry, my face was in the way. Let's go back after adding a label here. Bass. There we go. Let's go back into the piano clip at the top here. Double click, and again we're going to make that big screen. So we're going to work on the piano for the moment. I only want to hear the piano. So I'm going to click at the top here where there's a little S for solo editor. So that means when I play this back, we only hear piano. We don't hear the bass anymore. Cool. So what I want to do first is I want to turn these into chords. A chord is more than 2 notes played at a time. So 3 or more different notes played at the same time. Or they can be split up, notes played one after the other. That's an arpeggio of a chord. Some people will tell you that a chord is 2 or more notes. They're wrong. It's 3 or more, but that doesn't matter. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to drop this down an octave. So highlight everything, shift and down. There we go. I'm going to Control C all of these notes while they're highlighted. Then I'm going to Control V. And you see it's pasted notes here. The notes are black, which means they're selected, so I can click on one of them, move it, and it moves all of them. I'm going to move this up to what's the 5th of C, something I should know off the top of my head. Pretty sure it's G. And you see that it's moved everything the same distance. If I, while these are selected, move that down to F sharp, it's flattened everything. We want that at G. And what's handy about that is I have made these into power chords. You might know power chords if you play guitar, or fifths, a root and a fifth otherwise. And we don't have to think about it. I'm just checking those are all accurate. Yeah, those are all fifths. I didn't mess up. And while they're highlighted, I can press Control C again, click away, Control V to paste. And I've created more notes. I actually want these to be the 3rd in a scale. So I'm going to move them to, I'm pretty sure this is right. I'm pretty sure that E is the 3rd of a C chord. We're in C major, which, as you might know, means that there are no accidentals. We actually have a C sharp here, and here, and a G sharp here. And we can see on the other chords, we don't have C sharp in this scale, we have C. So I'm going to bring those down. And we don't have G sharp, we have G. And I know that's right because we're in C major. The other thing we could do, if I'm just going to Control Z to undo those things, if we play these chords, I'm listening to that and I'm thinking, it's okay, something doesn't sound quite right. Use your eyes, use your brain, think, okay, that first chord's nice, that second chord is not nice, something's wrong there, and then see if you can work out what it is. In this instance, we know that we have the root notes, the C, A, G, and C. We know that that sounded fine, and I can tell you from a music theory standpoint, if you copy these notes and you paste it and you go up a 5th, those will always sound fine, whatever they are. So it's going to be these notes in the middle, which are the 3rds in this chord. They sound a little weird, so I'm going to drag that down. I'm going to test it. Ooh, much better, much nicer. Ooh, we got something wrong there. It's that same C sharp that we just need to move down. Let's have a listen from the start again. Ooh, that last one sounded bad again. We're checking the 3rd. We're going to go down like that. Little tiny note on music theory, because I'm throwing out 3rds and 5ths and all kind of stuff like that, which might be a bit confusing. I'm going to extend this clip and just show you real quick what I mean by that. So a real quick refresher on scales, or an intro to scales if you're brand new. Scales are the most basic building block of music. The most straightforward and easy to understand scale is C major. If you look at a piano, like the piano we have on the side here, C major is all the white notes from C to C. You can tell you've done it because you've played 8 notes, da 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 da, and the first and last note kind of sound like the same note, but one of them's higher than the other. Let's try that again. C2 and C3. Da, da, oops. Da, 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 da. Can't sing. Don't get distracted by the fact I can't sing. So, if we write in all the white notes from C to C, we're going to start here, then D, then E, then F, then G, then A, C. That's a C major scale. Wonderful. So when we made a C major chord, we used a 1, the 3rd, sorry, we used the 1, C, we used a 3rd, and we used a 5th. 1, 3, 5. That's how all chords are built, especially the basic chords. So C, E, G. If we go back and look at the C major chord, I promise you it's going to be the notes C, E, and G. C, E, G, C, E, G, C, E, G. Yeah. We could play any other chord in C major. So let's say, what was a D chord in C major? We're going to start on D. We're going to get D, 2, 3, F, 3, 4, 5, A. I don't think we have a D chord in here to check. We have an A chord we can check, so let's go to the A. A, 2, third is C, and then we go back down to here. Third is C, 4, fifth is E. Let's go check that. A, C the third, and E the fifth. So it might be helpful to you to write out the scale from note to note. And you can use any other scale if you want. So for example, in this piece, we could take all of these, we could highlight all of them, the same as we went shift up or shift down to go up in octaves. We can use the up and down buttons to go into different keys. So if we wanted this same piece in D, we could just highlight everything, click up twice, and there we go. So how does that sound? Pretty good again. I preferred it in C. Highlight everything, down, down. There we go. I'm going to come out of that window and this window. And I'm actually going to save this scale for reference for later. So I'm going to grab the scissors tool, which I believe is 3 on the keyboard by default. Here we are. I'm going to turn my grid on. I'm going to click at the start of bar 6, where that is. I'm also going to click here, because I want to press 1 to use the normal cursor, highlight and move, get rid of that. I'm going to keep this just kind of at the start, just as a reference for what the scale is if we need that later. When I first started making music, I'd keep a scale at the front there just so I could reference it and I could count up and down for the different chords and everything. I'm going to grab bars 3 and 4 of the bass and the piano, and I'm going to move them over here to bar 6. I'm then going to listen to what I've done. Sounds pretty good. I think that could be a little longer. So normally when you play chords, you hang on them for a little bit. So you hold a chord, 2, 3, 4, then play another chord, 2, 3, 4. We're going to do that. We're going to change this so it's 2 chords a bar. And it's real easy to do. I'm going to highlight everything we have. I'm going to press 1 until I get the cursor with a little clock next to it. The object selection time stretch. So with these things selected, I can drag out to there, and you'll see these have now doubled in length. Press 1 again to go back to the normal cursor. Let's have a little listen to what we got. Pretty good. So it's twice as slow. We can do that the other way. If we highlighted everything, pressed 1 until the clock appears, we could smush everything to be this length. But it's a bit much, isn't it? I want to change one little thing. The piano's playing chords, the bass is playing root notes of those chords. Normally what would happen is the bass would play a little bit more of a rhythm. So what the bass might play in this example is 2 notes for every one that the piano plays. So we're going to highlight everything. I'm just going to hover over the end of one of these notes where you've got the arrows that go in either direction. I'm going to click and I'm going to drag. And you see that the durations have halved. I want to select everything, Control C. I'm going to hover over beat 2 of this bar and I'm going to hit Control V. You see how the notes are just doubled. Let's have a listen to that. Perfect. So that's the sort of thing a bass might play. I want to draw your attention to this thing at the very bottom. You see we've got some lines here. I'm going to get rid of the transport panel for the moment. I'm going to drag this up. This is the velocity panel. Velocity is how hard or how soft you play something. It'll be more obvious when we come to play with some different instruments. The main thing that velocity dictates is the volume. So if I play something soft, it makes not much noise. If I play something hard, it makes noise. And you can do everything in between to get different volumes. So I can... Oh, I just accidentally unselected everything. I'm going to select every other note. So I'm going to select the first one by dragging over it and clicking. Shift select the next note, and I'm going to keep shift selected while I click on all of these. In this velocity panel, you can see that these notes have selected. If I go to the top of this panel, we've got kind of a diamond shape. It's an up, down, and a down arrow. I'm going to click and drag those down. So now when we play it, the notes are going to go hard, soft, hard, soft, hard, soft, hard, soft. Let's have a listen. Perfect. It's actually a little quiet, so I'm going to drag everything, move them all up a bit. Which is much more realistic to how a bass player might play it. Like the notes on the beat would be harder, the notes between the beat would be softer. Let's close out of that and let's have a little play. Nice. This is a pretty nice pattern. It doesn't feel like it resolves though, does it? So I'm going to copy both of these clips and I'm going to press Ctrl D to duplicate. And we're going to play it again. It now feels like it needs to do something a little bit different. So I'm going to open up this repeat clip. So it goes da, da, da. I think maybe it needs like a I think maybe we want to start with A, ADC maybe. Ooh, so we know that this is supposed to be an E, and we know that that's maybe supposed to be an F. How does that sound? Yeah, that's better, I think. So that those last notes are A, D, C. So of course we have to go into our bass part, and we have to change those last notes to A, D, C. So if I want to hear this whole thing, I want to hear it repeat. In fact, I want these to be one longer clip rather than two shorter ones. I'm going to select the glue tool at the top here, which is 4 on your keyboard. I'm just going to click there to glue this and make it become 1. I'm going to click here to glue this and make it become 1. I'm going to press number 1 on my keyboard to go back to the cursor. At the top here, just going to reintroduce my transport panel. We can click from bar 6 up to bar 13, the end of bar 13, and you see how it makes this little green, this little grey selection. That's the render region or the loop region. So if I were to export the track, it would export everything from bar 6 to bar end of bar 13. If I press this little button next to the stop button, I've activated the cycle, so that means, as well as it becoming a charming purple colour, when we get to this end of bar 13, it's not going to carry on and play with bar 14. It's going to start back at bar 6 again. Example. Perfect. So that is a complete thing. we are missing an instrument. We're missing the drums, and if we wanted some kind of melody, we would add that as well. Perhaps that would be something else that the piano plays. We're going to add drums to begin with. So I'm going to go right click in this area, add instrument track. Rather than using HAlion Sonic SE this time, we're going to use Groove Agent SE. Add track. Give it a second to load. Maybe a bit longer than a second. There he is. So we now have a track for Groove Agent. For some reason it's put Groove Agent in between piano and bass. I actually want it underneath, and I want that to be called drums, and I want to add a little symbol of a drum kit. There we go. We're going to click here, the little piano icon, to open Groove Agent. Currently it's blank, nothing's loaded, so we need to add some kind of drum kit. You can go to the top here, there's a little empty box. You can click in there and we can see these are the different drum kits available to us. Studio Kit SE, I believe, is what's going to be included in Elements. I could be wrong about that. This will basically work with whatever drum kit you want to use. I want something real simple. Maybe, I don't know, hard rock. Yeah, it doesn't really matter what drum kit you use. The basic elements are going to apply. It's loading because it says loading. Okay, so at the moment we have a drum kit here. We can click the drums to hear everything, and you'll notice on the left hand side here these little pads light up as well, so you can see what applies to what, and you can click here as well. A little bit quiet, let's increase that volume. Cool. We can close that for the moment. We don't need this interface, not really. Gonna close that. This region is selected, which means that I can double click and create a new clip, just like that. We can double click that, and this little bottom panel opens up again. Now, rather than going full screen, I actually want to use this as it is here, but I don't want to use the piano controller. I'm going to do a quick addendum before I say this. I do use the piano controller to write my drum parts. You don't have to. So this is going to be the one thing where if you look at my other live streams, you're going to see me using the piano editor to write my drum parts. Various reasons for that, mostly habit. You don't have to. You can use, if you go down to the bottom here where it says editor, click the little arrow, drum editor. Oh boy, what have we got here? For starters, we want to zoom in, control and mouse wheel, so we're only looking at one bar. I'm gonna make this a little bit bigger. And you can see if you go up and down, we've got all these different drum bits available to us. So what we're really worried about is the stuff at the top here. So we want bass drum, acoustic snare, and hi-hat is mostly what we want. This is going to be a really quick intro to how to write drum parts. You're welcome. So we're going to start by double clicking at the start of bar 6, double clicking bass drum. So if we double click in a space, it puts the drum just to the left of it, so it means it's on that beat. So I want a bass drum here on beat 1, and I want a bass drum here on beat 3. I want another bass drum here in between beat 3 and beat 4. I also want a snare. I want an acoustic snare beat 6.2 and beat 6.4. Let's play that back soloed just to see what it sounds like. Yep, sounds like AC/DC are in the house. It's a very, very simple rock beat. We're going to add in closed hi-hat on every beat, like that. Let's listen to that. A little bit boring. We're going to put hi-hats in between. How does that sound? Pretty good. it sounds a little bit dead, a little bit dull, a little bit robotic. The main reason for that is we haven't velocity shaped it at all. So we're going to open up, we're going to expand this velocity panel. We're going to take hi-hats, we're going to select them and shift select the next one. Every hi-hat that's on a beat, we're going to increase the velocity to the very top here. We're also going to take both snares, we're going to increase their velocity most of the way, and this kick drum is also going to be at the top here as well. How does that sound? Way more like a drum part. Excellent. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. We're going to copy that by selecting everything and hitting Control D. Now the problem is we've duplicated it, but it's landed before the beat, before bar 7. So I'm just going to drag everything over again. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to drag this over to bar 8. And then I'm going to... I'm not going to copy it just yet. I'm going to go to the very end here. We're not going to have a hi-hat here. We're going to have 2 snares like that. So there's a little bit of like a really simple fill. So then when I highlight everything and I press Control D again, this time it lands on bar 10. I'm going to do one more thing. I'm not going to have a hi-hat here. Instead, I'm going to have a crash cymbal down here. And it's going to be quite high velocity as well. A little tip when you're writing drum parts is to maybe get a little picture of a drum kit, have a look at it, and try to associate what bits of the drum kit make what sound. So where is the bass drum on a drum kit? What bit of your body do you use to play it? The bass drum is your right foot, usually. Acoustic snare will almost always be your right hand, if you're right-handed, whatever your predominant hand is. Sorry, no, I said that wrong. My bad. Whatever your primary hand is, it's the other one that plays the snare. So your left hand, if you're right-handed, will play the snare. Hi-hats are played by your dominant hand. So if I want to play a crash cymbal, I'm going to use the same hand that's playing the hi-hat. So I need to think, how far away is the crash cymbal to then get to the hi-hat? Well, it's quite far, so actually I might not be able to play the crash and then get back to play this hi-hat. So I'm going to delete that. And it just makes it sound a little bit more like a drummer's actually playing this, this drum kit. So we're going to go all the way from crash. We're going to ignore this gap where the hi-hat would normally be. We're going to play the hi-hat on the second beat there. So I can close this panel and you can see that the drum parts are here. It looks a little different to the MIDI in the other clips, doesn't it? But that's fine. Let's have a little play and see what we got. It's not the best thing I've ever written, but it is fine. Now that we've got that drum kit in there, the bass kind of sounds a little bit lazy. I want the bass to sync up with what the drums is doing a little bit more. So we're going to open up this bass part, full screen. And rather than playing quarter notes, the bass is actually going to play eighth notes. We're going to go twice as fast with the bass. So at the moment, the grid is quarter notes. So we're going to go up here. There's a little cue here. We're going to click. We're going to change quarter to eighth, like so. We're going to highlight everything. And now, when we shorten the duration, it's going to be aligned to eighth notes, which is just right for our purposes. I'm going to copy the whole phrase, and I'm going to paste it in this gap here. Now, that's messed with the velocity a little bit. So we've got copies. So we've got hard, hard, soft, soft, hard, hard, soft, soft, which is a bit weird. I'm going to drag these all the way to the top so they're all the loudest they could possibly be. And then I'm going to drag them down, basically so they're all one volume together. I'm then going to drag it down to just under where the other notes are. So now we have this in the bass. Pretty good. How does that sound with everything else? Yeah, it sounds more like a song. Pretty good. I think that's pretty good. I want to add a bit of a structure to it. I don't just want to have the same set of chords repeating. I want to change it up, so I'm actually going to zoom out. I'm going to select this whole thing, and I'm going to press our favorite combination, Control D. We have the same thing played twice. I'm going to move the loop region over just by clicking and dragging it. So now we're working on this area. Rearrange myself because I've been sat here for a full hour. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is one of the easiest ways to make something sound like it's in a new section of a song, to highlight a change, is to change the drums ever so slightly. We're not going to change the actual pattern. We are going to change the cymbal that is being played. We're not quite at modulations just yet. Maybe we'll do a modulation, a cheesy half-step modulation at the end. Calicchio. Right. Just going to turn my face off for a second. So remember this editor? We want to be in the drum editor. Oh, that's what the score editor looks like. Drum editor. There we go. We're going to take all of these hi-hats and we're going to put them on the ride cymbal, which is down here, D sharp 2. Scroll out so you can see the whole thing. Mouse wheel, control and mouse wheel. Click select all of these hi-hats and we're just going to drag them down. Sounds a bit like a drum kit falling down a hill. So we've got ride cymbals here now. So now the drum part sounds like this. Just sounds like a different section, doesn't it? Especially compared to the previous. If you want to solo a track, by the way, you can just press S. While it's highlighted, you can press S on your keyboard. And now in this panel, you're only going to hear the drums. So let's just hear the difference between hi-hats and rides. Sounds fine. Yep, sounds pretty good to me. And then we press S again to hear everything back where it was. No, you're absolutely allowed to interrupt by all means, as there's a few of you watching. If you have questions, you want me to go over anything again, jump in the chat. That's what it's there for. Ultimately, I'm doing this to help. So if you need something repeating, or even if you just want to insist that I modulate, get in the chat. It's all good. I'm a friendly person. It's all good. I'm glad you're enjoying the tutorial. Good stuff. So we have these two different sections. I now need to change something in the piano. We're going to introduce a little bit of melody. I'm going to double click on the piano. And again, I'm going to go full screen because it's easier for you people to see. I'm going to do two things. I'm going to grab all of these and I'm going to shift down an octave. The reason I'm doing this is because I want these chords to now be played in the left hand. So piano, you get two hands, like most people in the world. Left hand is going to be playing the chords. Right hand is going to be playing a melody. I want the melody to be in kind of the same register that the original chords were being played in. And again, this is another way just to change things up, make things a little bit different. The lower you go in pitch, the less notes you can get away with simultaneously. If, for example, we wanted the piano to be playing the same thing as the bass, that would be fine because they're playing the same pitch. If you add any new pitches in the bass register, it's going to get really crowded sounding. So while we're in octave C1 and C2, I'm actually going to get rid of the thirds in every instance. So all the middle pitches here. How does that sound? Sounds alright. I actually think that these lowest Cs are a little bit too low, so I'm going to just grab them and go up. So, now in the original register, so kind of between C3 and C4, we're going to come up with a little melody. Melodies probably feel like they're really complicated. They absolutely don't have to be. The first helpful thing about melodies is to know that we're in C, so it's white notes that we want to use pretty much entirely. So I can, for example, just take these lowest pitches. I'm just going to copy all of them. So just the lowest notes of all of these, I can copy those, paste them 2 octaves up. Well, I'm ever so slightly out of time, so I'm just going to grab that, drag it over. And even though these are just the octaves, that kind of works as a melody. Like, it's the world's easiest melody, but it does work. What else could we do? I'm going to take these and I'm going to start them just after the left hand is played. So we're going to grab those and we're going to change the start position. If you hover over a MIDI note like this, the little left-right arrow appears again. You're going to grab that. We're going to go a quarter note after. So now we have this. Which is already a little bit more interesting than what we had to begin with. I'm just going to try and come up with something off the top of my head if I play this. What about... Bum, da 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 da. So we're going to start bum, the left hand chord. You can't see that because my face is in the way. Bum, the left hand chord. Da 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 da. Da. What about that? I'm going to get rid of these notes that were here. Ooh, that was really quite slow. Let's move these over. How does that sound? I'm going to get rid of this A. Ba-da-da-da-da. So when I kind of hum it to myself, that note, we hold on that note a little bit. So we're going to move G over. Ba-da-da-da-da. Maybe that. I don't love it. I feel like that pitch clashes with this chord. So actually I'm going to just play a G there. So we're going to move that to G. Do we play the same note? Let's move that one up. Da 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 da. How does that sound? Yeah, that kind of works. Da 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 da. Kind of feels like there should be a da 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 da. So let's get rid of that note there. So then actually I'm going to delete all of these. Can I get away with using that same pattern again? So this starts on beat 2. I'm going to copy that, Control C, I'm going to paste it there. How does that sound? That does not sound good. Because we've used the same melody, but the chords underneath it have changed, haven't they? So it doesn't sound so great. Let's have a listen again, and we're going to listen critically and try to think, where does it sound bad? Which one of these pitches is wrong? We know something isn't right, but specifically where? Fine. it is pretty much that last note, isn't it? So let's scroll down and look at the chords. We end on an E. So this needs to be a note that's in that E. We can either land on E. We could also land on B, because B is the 5th in this chord. What happens if we do land on E? Or in fact, could we land... Rather than playing G here, what if we play D? Just because that's closer to E. Just to vary the pattern up a little bit. How does that sound? Ooh, that's nicer. Cool, so we know that this first pattern works with the first 2 chords. So we're going to copy that, we're going to paste that. Bar 18, beat 2. So we establish a pattern, don't we? We play C, A, G, C, and then we play C, A, G, E, and then we play C, A, G, C again. We establish this pattern of C, A, G, something, C, A, G, something, C, A, G, something. And then we subvert that expectation. We do it 3 times, and then we play A. So the A kind of comes out of nowhere and makes it go, ooh, what just happened? And we have a D, and then for the first time we have the tonic chord, C, played for 2 beats, which hasn't happened before. We haven't had a chord stay on for an entire bar. So actually I think we can get away with playing the tonic notes, the root notes of these chords. So A, D, C. So that was A, D, C. Can we just do that? So we have the chord and then the tonic after do, da, do, da, do, da. How does that sound? That probably wants to be on that beat. Cool. I think we want maybe like a shorter thing in between. I'm just clicking notes that I know might work because they're in the scale. What about G to A? G to A there. I preferred it how it was. Yeah. Cool. I'm going to do one more thing in here. I'm going to open up the velocity window. Excuse me, I just played a big E. I'm going to open up the velocity window. I'm going to highlight this right hand melody. I'm going to increase its velocity, and that way it's going to stand out from the left hand a little bit. I'm also going to drag open all of these, select all these left hand power chords. I'm going to drag them down a tiny bit. So now, if we come back to this, we have chords with a melody and a slightly new drum part. The bass is still the same though. Let's have a little listen. In fact, let's have a listen from the start. I'm going to loop this whole region. Again, it sounds a little bit like a nursery rhyme because we're in C major using basic MIDI instruments, but it's music. It works. It does what it's supposed to. Listening to that, I felt a little bit like this first section from bar 6 is kind of more like a... I don't know, for some reason I felt like the ride cymbal drum part should be there instead. So I'm actually just going to swap these over. just like that. Let's have a little listen to that. Yeah, I think that works better. Because I guess the ride cymbal takes up a bit more space because you hit it and then it kind of resonates for a bit. The note holds out, whereas a hi-hat, you hit it and it's gone almost immediately. So I think giving the melody a bit more space to breathe is probably the right call there. I'm going to make sure these two sections are really easy to tell apart. So I'm going to change the colour of them. I'm going to highlight these. At the top here we've got a little... I always think it looks like Pac-Man facing downwards. I think it's supposed to be like an art palette that you hold with your thumb. If you click that, we got some colours here. I'm going to colour this first section orange. I'm going to highlight this second section. I'm going to colour that. I'm going to colour that yellow. And the reason I'm using similar colours is because these are similar parts. If I had another section next to it that had an entirely different drum beat, entirely different chords, entirely different bass line, I would then change that to be blue, because then it's completely different. But keeping similar colours is a good way to remind me that we have a similar section. I also do that for stuff like if I have a riff or something, if that riff is played only on one instrument by way of an intro, and then that's the riff that's used in other parts, I'll use similar colours so I know they're related parts. I know a lot of producers who will colour the tracks, and then they'll want all of these piano tracks to be orange. They'll want all of their bass tracks to be blue. Oh, and I'm sorry, I'm holding over this little bar, and I'm holding shift and clicking with my mouse, left mouse, and then you can select a colour. So a lot of producers I know will do this sort of thing, so the tracks will look this way. I don't work like that. I want to use these colours to see sections. That's just what works for me. Wonderful. So I can see that we've got these different sections here, and it brightens the screen up as well. It's easy to read, and it's colourful, and it's nice. What else could we do here? We could have a slightly different version of this. So I could highlight that, Control D. We could, for example, have this version played a lot softer and then played a bit harder here. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to open up the bass, full screen. We're going to delete these repeats. We're going to highlight over these notes. I'm going to do it. It's going to take a minute, but we're going to do it like this. And what we're going to do... Oh, excuse me, I lost my place there. We're going to highlight all of these. We're going to put the velocity down like so. I've got the grid on so I can pull that out to be entire bars. Oh, I've lost a C here, so I'm just going to pull that one all the way over. So now, lower velocity is going to sound like it's just being played much softer. Perhaps a little too soft. Nice, okay. We'll close out of that. And then we're also going to, in the drums, with the drum editor, remember it's down here, editor, arrow, drum editor, we're actually going to delete all of these hi-hats. We're going to delete all of the kicks that aren't on the first beat of every bar. Ah, Tuscan coming at me from YouTube. How's it going, buddy? We're going to delete all of the bass drums that aren't on the start of a bar. So those two, those two, those two, those two, those two, those two, those two. Going to leave these in. And I'm also actually going to leave bar 22 as it is, with a little snare bit. I'm going to get rid of the little snare bit in bar 17. And all of these snares I'm going to highlight. I'm going to move them to side stick. So that if you imagine a snare drum, the bit that goes ka, you normally hit it with a stick in the middle of the skin and it makes the snare sound like that. Here we're using the side stick, so that means you get the stick and you just kind of hit it on the side of the drum and it goes like that. It's a much softer sound. We're going to select all of these except for bar 21, and we're going to lower the velocity as well, so that's softer. Bar 21 is going to be heavier because that's going to be our intro to the rest of everything. Let's close out of that. And up here, we're going to open the piano. We're going to delete all of the left-hand chords. We're going to grab the melody. We're going to shift down to be a lower octave, and we're also going to lower the velocity. I'm going to show you one little thing I like about the velocity shaping. When we have all these notes selected, we can hover over to the side here at the top left. So at the top where we have the up down arrows, at the side of these selected notes we have a little that kind of shape, and at the other side we have, that's hard to do on camera, we have that kind of shape. Those are ways to do crescendo. So at the right hand side here, I'm going to click that up, and what it does is it brings up the velocity at this side. The first note will stay where it is and everything else will kind of be adjusted to be a slope, and we can bring this side down a little bit as well if we wanted to. So that's just going to be a gradual crescendo of the piano part. So you remember that I said we use colours to denote different sections. This is a soft version of this, so actually ideally these would be different colours. But in the colour palette we only have one, we don't have like a different shade of yellow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this section, that's going to become yellow. This section is going to become dark orange. This section is going to become light orange. So again, they're all related, but they're slightly different versions. Let's have a little play. So we're going to start off with the yellow section, which is just the chords. We're going to have a soft version of the melody, and then we're going to have a heavier version of the melody. All right, here we go. Yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. What else can we do to that? I think that actually the velocity here gets a little bit too hard, so I'm actually just going to bring that down a tiny bit, but it's still going to slope upwards like that. And also, I think we need the lower notes in bar 20 and 21. So you know in if we solo the piano at the end here, I think we need something like that. Kristen Moonrise, how's it going on YouTube? So we're going to have a lower A down here. Boom, da. And then D, da, da. Let's have a C there as well. 3, 4. The other thing I noticed when listening to that is when the piano plays, it sounds a bit bare when the piano isn't playing. Maybe that's so obvious I didn't need to say it out loud, but it does feel a little bit bare, and you don't notice it when all the other instruments are playing. But when it's just piano, it does sound a little bit bare. We can put the sustain pedal on. You know the sustain pedal on pianos, you press it with your foot, notes get held, so you can go ba, but the note will go ba and just sound forever. Oh, you have Ableton at the moment, Kristen, sorry. I like Ableton. It is tricky. I prefer Cubase, obviously. But yeah, Ableton's great if you're using any of like the Novation launch pads or any of those kind of performance DJ bits of kit. Texas, how's it going? I'm in Cambridge in the UK. Sounds posh, really isn't. Ableton's great, yeah, if you're using like the launch pad or anything like that. But the tracks mode, I think, is quite tricky to get your head around. Luckily, the tracks mode in Ableton kind of resembles the standard layout in Cubase, so this will definitely apply a little bit. Calicio is asking a small question: how does SE differ from Pro? Different amount of tracks with other features. So I'm kind of exploring that and working this out as I go, because I've been using Pro for like nearly a decade now, and I've kind of taken a lot of the features for granted. I'll show you a couple little things. We can... No, hang on, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm going to add the sustain pedal and then I'll answer your question if that's okay, because I don't want to start something and then forget all about it. Let me show you the sustain pedal. In this panel at the bottom where we have the velocity, we can do other things. In fact, if you hover over the word velocity here, if you click it, you'll see some of the other things that become available. Especially interesting is where at the bottom of this little list where it says CC64 sustain. CC, all these different things labeled CC are different kinds of MIDI. MIDI is what we're using to control this piano. So if you had like a MIDI controller like my Oasis that I normally have on streams, you press a button on your controller, you are sending MIDI information to Cubase to tell it to play this note. In this instance, we're sending MIDI information from Cubase to tell Cubase to play a note. And this is the different kinds of information you can send are what pitch to play, how hard to play it, and how long for. So the length is obviously the length, the how hard to play it for is the velocity, and the pitch is obviously the different pitch on a piano. There is other kind of MIDI information you can send. For example, you can send sustain information. So here we're going to add sustain. So click there, sustain. Sorry, I should say CC is called control change. One of the control changes you send is sustain. You don't really need to know anything other than that. What do we do? There's nothing here. What do we do? Go to the top. There's a little pencil tool. You're going to click. We're going to click once. We're going to click twice. And we're going to click a third time at the end. I'll explain why in a second. Let's get the cursor back. We're going to start with the sustain off. Sustain off is all the way down here. We're also going to end with the sustain off. And the reason we're doing that is because I want to make sure that when we go back into the next section of the music, I don't want the sustain pedal to carry on. So I'm sending the message to turn the pedal off at the end of this bar before we get to the next phrase. This is currently not on. It needs to be all the way up to be on. And I'm just going to check that that is where that first note starts. Yep, there's no other notes before that. So that's going to be good. Why do we have two? Oh, that's weird. I'm just going to delete those. Not sure what I did there. That was weird. Anyway, so we start with sustain pedal off. Then we put it on. And this is just me being tidy. You don't need to do that. Because we put it on here and we turn it off here. It's just on the off chance that the thing preceding this bar has a sustain pedal on. I don't want the notes from that section to bleed into the notes from this section. So I take the sustain pedal off so it mutes any notes that might be held, and then we put it back on to mute these notes that we want. It's me being unnecessarily tidy. That's just a habit I'm in. deal with it. So now we have this. Ah, lovely. See how the notes are just kind of held nice and flowing. I also have extra notes there. I'm not sure what I did. Very strange. Oh yeah, you gotta have tidy MIDI, otherwise what's even the point? Let's play that in the context of everything else. It just feels a little more like it's taking up the same sonic space. It's quite nice. It's airy, but we don't need it for the whole piece, so the sustain will come off at the end of this orange section. Perfect. Perfect. I like that a lot. We were talking about differences between SE and Pro. So one of the big differences is the plugins and the effects that are available. So if I, on the left-hand side here, if I select any of the tracks, you'll see that my options on the left-hand side here change as well. Let's take piano, for example. We have this little window here called Audio Inserts. Inserts is a fancy word. We're basically just telling Cubase that we want to put something on the piano, like an effect of some kind, like reverb, delay, anything like that. It's called an insert. So at the moment we have 8 total inserts. In the Pro version, just for example, I think that's doubled. So you can have many, many more effects on an audio track. I personally have probably never had more than 8. Just has never come up. I'm not sure my computer would handle it if I did that. So you can have up to 8 inserts. You'll also notice this is a really tiny detail. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pre-inserts and 2 post-inserts. That's pre or post fader. So basically we can set the volume of a track. What's the easiest way to describe this? Well, Calicio, I know you know a little bit more about music, so for this question I'm not gonna dumb it down. When you set the level of something, the pre-effects come before that level is set, the post-effects come after. So if, for example, you had a lot of reverb on a track and you turned the volume of the track all the way down, if you had a pre-effect, that reverb would come down as well. If you had a post-effect, the reverb would carry on and ignore your volume settings. I hope that made sense, and I'm sorry for those of you that didn't make sense too. Let's add an effect to the piano just by way of an example. Let's go in here. So just a reminder, you select your track. You might need to open up piano and then audio inserts. And we're just going to click in this blank space and we're going to scroll down. We're going to look for reverb. I believe RoomWorks SE is packaged with Elements. So we're going to open that. And let's just listen to that by itself. We're going to solo the piano by pressing the S. So that's got a bit more of an airy space. All of these different buttons will affect the way that this reverb sounds. I know, for example, that I don't like a lot of pre-delay. I like a longer sound but a lower mix. And the rest of the stuff I'm not so worried about. This is all just through playing with stuff over the years. What's really cool about Cubase and the light versions versus the Pro versions is that over time they will take stuff from the Pro version and add it to the more affordable versions. So if you see something that you really like in Pro, it might just be a case of waiting until they add it to Elements or the artist version. One of the things, yeah, for example, there's just many more effects. So I think RoomWorks is here because I have Pro installed. I don't know that for a fact, but I believe that you get RoomWorks SE. Oh bugger, what did I have? That was like that, that was like that, that was like that. there's different kinds of effects as well, different kinds of filters, EQs, pitch shifting, modulation. I think you basically have fewer effects and you have fewer instruments that come packaged with Elements. There's also a limit to how many tracks you can have. Let's take a little look actually. If we go to Steinberg.net, click on Cubase, is there something where we can compare versions? Yes, there is. So Steinberg.net, click on the Cubase at the top. I'm going to get rid of my face for the moment. And then scroll down, comparison. So we're just going to compare. Really what we want to pay attention to is Elements, which is here, Artist and Pro. So Pro is what I'm using in pretty much every other stream I do. Artists is a good halfway house between Elements and Pro, and Elements is here. Elements is, I think, under £100, but you can get a free 30-day trial. I am actually using the trial to do this stream because I'm not going to pay extra money for Cubase. I have the Pro version. So I'm using the trial at the moment. And as you can see, there's no restrictions. It just stops being available after 30 days. So the audio engine, the audio resolution are exactly the same. So you always get high quality audio, which is great. The audio quality does, to an extent, rely on what external audio hardware you have. So if you have an expensive piece of audio hardware, you might get a better sound. That's up to you and how much money you want to spend. MIDI tracks, audio tracks, and VST instrument tracks. So we've been using VST instrument tracks today. You can see that we are limited to 24 VST instrument tracks. We are limited to 48 audio tracks and 64 MIDI tracks. MIDI tracks you can use to control instrument tracks. And in each instrument track can, for example, house a lot of instruments inside of it. So for example, if we have a look at HAlion, which is controlling our piano here, if I really wanted to, this bass could be housed inside of HAlion as well. This HAlion could in fact house 16 different instruments. The only problem with doing it that way is that if I loaded my bass into HAlion, I would be stuck with reverb on my bass because I put the reverb plugin on the piano as well. Does that kind of make sense? I like to be able to process and do different effects, so I wouldn't do that. But we could have a different kind of track called a MIDI track, and that could then control different instruments inside of HAlion. So as opposed to something like Groove Agent, which only has one drum kit, which is fine. So if we have a look back, Steinberg.net, 24 VST instrument tracks, piano, bass, drums, guitar, maybe some kind of percussion, a synth. Let's say in verse 2, instead of a piano, we have an accordion. Let's add another drum kit for no reason. Let's put the melody on a different instrument, and let's harmonize with another instrument. That's 10. I can think of 10 instruments. And remember that each of these instruments could actually hold up to 16 instruments itself. So 24 feels like a real limitation when compared to unlimited. It's not. You'd be fine with that. Interesting you say vocal. Vocals you would add on an audio track. So anything that requires a microphone like this thing, or if you want to play guitar or bass guitar, or you want to play your piano and record it, you would use something called an audio track. And I'm actually doing another February 7th, I believe. February 7th, I'm doing a intro to Cubase stream like this, but we're only using audio. So we'll see what audio tracks can do. You could use a vocal VST like a choir. There are some good vocal choirs out there. In general, they're not quite there. So, like, in terms of sounding realistic, they're pretty good, but yeah, they're not quite there yet. Kristen's question, yes, I would also recommend Dorico. In terms of a scoring software to work with Cubase, Dorico is good because it's made by the same people, which is why on Steinberg.net there's a little Dorico tab here. You can actually edit score inside of Cubase. So if we open up, for example, piano, at the bottom here, in the editor, we can use the score editor. I haven't used the score editor that much, but it definitely exists. In fact, I'm not really sure what I'm doing there, so I'm going to Control-Z that. So it depends how much scoring you want to do. If it's just something to have as like an option, then you can do quite a lot with the score editor inside of Cubase already. Or if you want something standalone that can work with Cubase really well, Dorico. You can do a lot of transferring back and forth between Dorico and Cubase. I don't do an awful lot of scoring, so I get by with Guitar Pro when I have to write score, and very occasionally using the score editor inside of Cubase. Let's have another look between the differences between these different versions. VST Instruments 8 as opposed to 3, so it might be worth seeing what comes packaged in terms of where's it gone? Virtual Instruments. So you get Basic, Groove Agent, Prologue, good. Prologue is a synthesizer. We'll maybe have a play with that in a second. Groove Agent is what we use for drums. You don't get Retrolog, that's not the end of the world. You don't get Pad Shop, that's not the end of the world. Spectre, Mystic, Loop Mash, all these HAlion sets, that's fine. So you get HAlion Sonic, which is, as we saw, that has an awful lot of instruments inside of it. Let's have a little explore. So you've got guitars, you've got you've got Kalimba, you've got all the general MIDI sounds, you've got various... Actually, you know what, let's just make another little track and have an explore. So I'm going to minimize these things because we're sort of talking more about what's available in general at the moment. You've got different synths. You've got some cool arpeggios and stuff. That's pretty fun. Cool. Bassoon. Have a bassoon. Who doesn't love bassoon? Choir. You've got some general MIDI voice stuff here. Like I was saying earlier, it doesn't actually sound like a voice, but it sounds like something that's supposed to sound a bit like a voice, which is fine. And you've also got all these different effects that you can use to change the sound as well. So if you want to get really specific with it, you can. Oh, I've ruined it a little bit there. Ah, you're a bassoonist. Good. Well, you don't need to be anymore. We got one here. So we've got drums inside of HAlion as well. Loads of different pianos. Dulcimer. Actually, quite a nice dulcimer. Shakuhachi. A sitar. Loads of cool stuff. So there's a lot of stuff inside of HAlion. Some of it's general MIDI, so it sounds a bit basic, a little bit like a ringtone from the early 2000s. But then you've got lots of cool stuff that isn't general MIDI as well, like this. So if you're making dance music, that sort of thing is going to be really handy. I'm going to close that. And with that track selected, I'm going to press Shift Delete to get rid of it. You can also, if you shift click these tracks, you can change the size of them, which is really handy. So for example, if I'm writing a piece of music for 3 instruments, this can stay this size forever. If I want to start adding, if I want to add, for example, I don't know, let's say an additional 21 tracks, I can just make these a little bit smaller, so it's a little easier to see everything at the same time. And you'll know if you hang out for the regular live streams, you'll know that I can have like a crap load of tracks if I really want. What are some of the other differences between the software? Obviously, the more expensive versions you get, the more extra sounds you get, the more different kinds of bassoon you can use. MIDI plugins, I mean, to be honest, it's a lot of the differences are things that I use occasionally. But if I was stranded on a desert island and I only had Cubase Elements, I'd be fine. I could write plenty of music. What are some of the other things? Chord pads. We haven't even looked at chord pads. How are we doing for time? How are we doing for time? Okay, so in theory I have 20 minutes left, but we can sort of go as long as we really need to. Chord pads. Yeah, okay, let's talk about chord pads for a little bit. I'm just going to scroll through and see if there's anything else that would be really handy. Chord track as well. Okay, chord pad, chord track. Those are probably the big things, really. Okay, so let's highlight the piano track. I'm going to open up the lower panel by clicking up there. You'll notice that we have the editor, we have the mix console, we have sampler control, and we also have chord pads. What's all this? Preloaded chords. Preloaded chords inside of C major by default. Which is really, really handy. We can change these chords up as well. So, for example, if we take this A7, the left, right button here will change the tension. So if I want something simpler, I can cycle through all the way up to A dominant 7, sharp 9, flat 13. It's not my favourite chord, but it's definitely an option. We can go all the way back down to A7. There it is. And we can also change the voicings, which is, so you keep the same notes, but you just play them in a slightly different order. That's all that is. And we can, if we really wanted to, just change this to a different chord altogether. So let's say rather than A major 7, I want that to be F sus 2. So it's a great little way to come up with different kind of chord patterns. And even better, I can drag and drop these chords into the track at the top here. And then play that back. Which is pretty nifty. And of course I can put that on any instrument I want. What happens if I put it on the drum kit? Nothing. Good. So I think this is a really helpful tool, especially if you're not a keyboard player. You can still work out how to play these chord parts. So you can just cycle through and find different chords that you like. So let's say over here, let's say I want to go with a C7, A minor 7, and an E7 and an F augmented. Let's say I like these chords. You can kind of just click these with your mouse and work out an order or a rhythm. I mean, it'd be better if you took a little more time working out your chords, but you get the idea. So you can work out the rhythm you want to play. I think you can even record from there as well. That's another thing we didn't look at. This track is selected. Piano is selected at the top here. and record enable is turned on. That little red button is on. If I bring the transport panel over, oh, let me try that again. If I bring the transport panel over, there we go. Sorry, I just broke something over here. Transport panel. If I hit play followed by record, a little block starts to appear. If I start hitting these buttons, it's pretty nifty, right? That wasn't in time. So I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to press C on my keyboard. So now when I hit play, friendly metronome to keep me in time. So let's try that again. Play followed by record. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then spacebar to stop. That was alright. That wasn't my best work. It's a little bit out of time. If I double click that and open full screen, yeah, you can see my timing is all over the place. So what I can do is highlight all of these. I think the shortest duration I have is 1/8 notes. So the grid is 1/8 notes up here. I can press Q, and you can see how it jumps into time. This one was so out of time, it's not done it properly. Da, 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 da. Yeah, so Q stands for quantize, and this is going to pull everything in time. So now we have this. Oh, oops, I forgot about these notes. Hello. That's better. Let's try that again. They're a little bit quiet, aren't they? So we can just bring the velocity up a tiny bit. Better. Now let's say in my chord pads, I start messing around with these chords. I change them, so when I come back to it, these chords are no longer here. And I think, damn, I've forgotten what I was playing. I don't want to have to go in here and work it out. So what we can do instead is add something called a chord track. So we right click, like we've done every other time, right click, add chord track. I'm just going to place this at the top there. I can shift right click this MIDI clip and create chord symbols. Shift right click, create chord symbols. Just going to agree with it. Look at that. Look at that. It's telling me what chords I was playing. How massively convenient is that? We can do that with everything else as well. So if I highlight these, this middle bit doesn't have chords, but this bit does. Oh, those are only power chords. So actually I only need to know what this is. Right click, create chord symbols. Okay. So now you'll see this all the time when I'm jamming, when I'm trying to come up with guitar parts or something on an instrument. I'll start playing along and I'll think, I have completely forgotten what these chords are in the backing track. So I'll create a chord track, I'll create chords, so then I can read this as I'm going along. It's kind of like MIDI sight reading, I guess. So I can think C, A minus, G, C, and it's just so much easier to do than having to, well, I don't know, what would the alternative be? Not do it. Yeah, so chord track is really helpful. The chord track can send out random MIDI information, which is really unhelpful, so I tend to keep it muted just to avoid anything stupid happening. So chord track, just press the little M to mute it so it doesn't do anything silly. That was chord tracks and chord pads. We haven't talked about automation or levels or anything like that. Piano track. If we click on that and click the top piano just here where it says piano, we've got 3 bars here. We have volume, pan, and time. Volume is exactly what it sounds like. If I'm going to solo the piano, I'm going to repeat this clip here. Turn metronome off by pressing C. If this is too loud, we can just drag the volume down till we don't hear it anymore. I tend to work in clumps of 4. So if I'm listening to a track and I think, ooh, that thing is just a little bit too loud, double click on the number -4. And that's pretty good. If it's still a little too loud, -8. I think anything between, and these are decibels by the way, anything between 4 decibels you're not really going to hear properly. So I'd take that down by 4 if I wanted to. What else could we do? Pan is direction, so whether it's in your left ear, your right ear, or in the middle. At the moment it's in the middle. C stands for center. Shove that in the left. Sounds a bit disorientating at first, doesn't it? We can shove it in the right. We can have it slightly off to the side a little bit, just to give it a bit more sense of space. Drum kits I tend to have in the middle. Bass I always have in the middle. Anything that's playing chords I tend to have far left and right. If something's playing a melody, I'll have it near the center but ever so slightly offset. We're getting into mixing there, you don't need to worry about that too much. Time, I've never known why you'd use time. You can just offset it so it's fast or slow, so it's ahead or behind. I've never used that. Literally never. These things you can automate. Automating, what does the word automate sound like? It sounds like the word automatic. You can take elements of an instrument and have them change automatically over time. Select a track and you can see when you hover over the little coloured bar here, there's a downward facing arrow. Click on that, opens up an automation panel. By default we can automate volume. If you hover over this little line that's appeared, you see the pencil tool emerges. The pencil tool appears. You can click somewhere and you can use this to draw. At the moment it's syncing to the beats of the bar, which is fine. It's syncing to the first beat of every bar. If I wanted it to sync to a beat, I could select beats up here, so that I could change the automation for every single beat if I really wanted to. So now if we listen to that, it's going to sound like it's fading in and out. And then it stays quiet, and then maybe it goes too loud here. You can also change the curvature of that, so I want it to actually be quieter for most of that and then suddenly peak up at the very end. And then maybe come suddenly down again. I remember when they brought this in, that was a big day. I like that a lot. So that sort of thing is great for fading in and out. You can also, if we click on the word volume, you can also automate anything. My face is in the way. You can automate any aspect of the reverb, for example, the plugin that we put in earlier. I'm going to change the mix. So I want it to start for some reason with no reverb. I want the reverb to come in this section. So I'm going to automate that down there and fade it in. So we're going to start here with no reverb, and you'll hear the reverb come in at about this point. Don't know why you'd want to do that, but you can. So that's automation. I tend to automate effects. Sometimes I want a phaser in a section and not in another section. Sometimes I usually want things to pan automatically or the volume to come up or down. So if, for example, a guitar has a guitar solo, you want to boost the guitar solo because you probably want it to be louder and be heard a little bit better. I feel like that's pretty much everything you'd reasonably want to cover. We'll talk very quickly about exporting. So when you've finished your piece of music, if you want to export an MP3 or a WAV, the first thing you need to do is set your region. So I want to go from bar 6 up to the end of bar 29. But actually, it's not just going to end. is it? There's going to be a bit of a tail, so when, especially drum kits and pianos, the notes hang around for a little bit after they're played. I'm going to delete these. I'm going to have this last another 2 bars, just where everything fades out. So I think it ends at bar 31 there, but I've given it an extra bar just in case. It's mostly reverb from the piano, so that's going to hang out there. I'm also going to start it a beat early. There's an annoying thing on SoundCloud where if you export your track here and someone presses play on SoundCloud, it's got to load it, so it's going to start playing it at about here. It's a real pain in the butt, so I tend to give it a little bit of space just so it can load the sound before it starts playing. I don't know if you're uploading to SoundCloud, you might be, so that's something to do just in case. We haven't talked about saving. We've gone all this time without saving our work, which is really dangerous, especially on actually working with computers, really dangerous. Control and S is your shortcut for saving. The first time you do it, it's going to ask you where you want to save it. I want to save it in this folder. I'm just going to call it Yes, because I'm hilarious. Every time you make a big change, you want to get in the habit of pressing Control S, and you can tell it's doing it because you get the little wheel there where the cursor is. If you want to save a different version and keep a version as it was, you can go to File at the top left and Save As, and then call it a different file name, and then it's saved as a different file name, and then when you press Control S thereafter, it's saved under the new file name. Let's talk a little bit about exporting really quickly. So we've got our loop region, which is also our render region. We go File, Export, Audio Mixdown. So the name is automatically the name of whatever your project is. Yes, again, will be fine. It's going to automatically put it in the same folder. Let's open up that folder just in case. Elements stream. So now that I've told it I want to export something, it's created a folder in here called Mixdown. So the track's going to appear in this Mixdown by default. And we can check this PC, desktop, element stream, Mixdown. Desktop, element stream, Mixdown. Perfect. If you're doing any kind of online, if you're uploading the track straight away from Cubase to SoundCloud or Bandcamp, you can get away with an MP3 file type, MPEG 1 layer 3, and the standard settings will do you just fine. I tend to either upload music to create music for videos or films, or to go to Spotify or something. So I want something like, I want a wave, and I want it usually 48 kilohertz sample rate, and I tend to actually go for 24-bit. If that doesn't make sense to you, don't worry about it. You almost always want interleaved, because that means that your stereo processing is going to be intact. I've often rendered things out as mono down mix, and it just sounds a bit weird. If this isn't making sense to you, don't worry about it. Just go wave, 48 kilohertz, 24-bit, interleaved. If you want high quality, if you're not so worried about the quality, you want a smaller file size, MPEG 1 layer 3, which is MP3, 44.1 kilohertz, 128 kilobytes a second, again interleaved. Don't worry about the rest of this. Press the export button, and it's basically just going to look like it's loading or installing something. It's basically playing this through, and when it's finished, the dialog box closes, and we have inside of our Mixdown folder, Yes again. It was coming through my speakers, which I hadn't realised were on until just now. So that's how you export stuff from Cubase. If you have any questions, now is the time to ask them. I will start wrapping up and letting you know about what's on the horizon and stuff. Thank you for hanging out. I really hope this was informative. That's the whole reason I do stuff like this, to teach. And this was a real an interesting experience, just going back to complete basics, assuming that whoever's watching has no prior knowledge of how music works. It's been really fun. I always forget how much comes packaged with Cubase Elements. I'm curious to know how much Cubase Elements actually costs these days. Elements is £85, which is pretty good considering that you can do everything that we've talked about today. £85. There's also a month trial, download trial version right there. For reference, Cubase Artist is nearly £300, and Cubase Pro is £500, which sounds about right considering everything you can do with it. Thank you, Kristen Moonrise. These streams happen twice a week. They're a little bit more advanced. I use a few different techniques. I have a MIDI keyboard in front of me that I use as well. Sometimes I record guitar. The usual stream times are UK times Monday 8 p.m. GMT and Saturdays 1 p.m. GMT. So whatever time you've been watching today, this is the usual Saturday spot, and I also have a later one on Mondays. So twice a week I go live for 2 hours making music in Cubase. Sometimes I use other software as well, sometimes I use hardware as well. They're a bit more creative than what we've been doing today, but they're still highly educational. I still take questions. If you want to go into, if you want to know in detail how I do something I do on one of those streams, I'm absolutely prepared to talk about it in detail. I have about a year ago, I became Steinberg certified. So the people that make Cubase have put their faith in me and said, "Yep, this person is able to teach Cubase," which is rad. So I don't want to say I'm an expert because I'm still learning stuff about Cubase. There is so very much in there, and I'm always learning new stuff about music. But I definitely have enough money. I don't have enough money. That's a lie. I have enough knowledge to talk about Cubase for a while and impart some of what you're able to do with it. And I'm really pleased that Steinberg seemed to agree with me in that regard. That's really cool. Yeah, so I mentioned that I've got some other special streams coming up. I'm doing some things with different software companies. If you find me on Twitter at LTGuitarist, you'll see all of the dates up there. The next important date for you people that are watching now, based on the fact that you've watched this one, is February 7th. On February 7th, which I think is outside of the Monday-Thursday pattern. Oh no, it's just Monday. So 8 p.m. UK time on Monday the 7th of Feb, I am doing an audio intro to Cubase. So very similar to what we spoke about today, but using audio only rather than MIDI. So if you want to build on what you've learnt today, that would be the thing to do, February 7th. So whatever platform you're watching on, if you're watching on Twitch, give us a follow. I'm trying to build Twitch up a little bit. If you're watching on YouTube, give us a subscribe. I've been doing these streams for years, so if you really want to sit through and watch years of live streams, you can do that. I also have lots of other music-related videos, guitar stuff, music, comedy stuff that you can check out. If you want to support an independent artist, i.e. me, you can check out my Ko-fi, which is linked down here. You can make a little donation. You can literally buy me a coffee or help me buy guitar strings. I also have, I think, all of my music library up there to download. Some of it's for free. So, yeah, go do that. That'd be nice. That'd be a great way to help out an independent artist who is very suddenly freelance in this crazy, crazy world. I'm going to go. Thanks for hanging out. I'll see you on the next one. Monday is the next stream. Monday, 8 p.m. UK time. All right. Toodaloo.